But let's begin with the Washington Post reporting on two Trump employees allegedly moving boxes of papers at Mar-a-Lago just one day before FBI agents traveled there to pick up classified documents. And that's not all. The Post reports that investigators also have evidence that the former president kept classified documents out in the open in his office and showed them to others. We're going to bring in my panel. We have Errol Louis, political anchor for Spectrum News. Also Rachel Nichols of Headliners with Rachel Nichols on Showtime. Republican strategist Jason Osborne and CNN political commentator S.E. Cupp. But here first to help us break this down legally is our CNN chief legal analyst, Laura Coates. Laura, great to see you. So tell me, what does all of these new developments, are the legal implications here for Donald Trump?
Wow, Allison, I mean, just think about it. One of the hardest things to do as a prosecutor is to figure out how I'm going to get inside of the brain of a potential target. How do I figure out that person's intent? How do I figure out what they really wanted to do? And then you have this reporting that suggests that not just that the documents were retained or that they were moved, but the possibility of even a dress rehearsal to figure out what to do when the National Archives came to get the documents, or a duly executed subpoena was actually issued and then fulfilled. It really does not bode well for an intended defendant or target to have this type of information out there, because it really confirms the possibility that you do have intent, the intentional act to try to obstruct a lawful investigation. And remember, this is all falling under the Presidential Records Act, Allison. As you well know, these documents don't belong to the former president, Donald Trump. He had advance notice that they did not. Even if it was an inadvertent retention of documents, he was certainly for months on notice that he was no longer supposed to have them. So reporting that suggests that there was a plan in place, in addition to his own attorney having had to testify in front of a grand jury, Allison, and the attorney-client privilege being pierced and under the crime fraud exception, this does not bode well for Donald Trump to try to prove that he did not have the level of intent that a prosecutor needs to show.
So if this reporting bears out, and we've heard bits and pieces of this before, and Jack Smith, the special counsel, has evidence of this, does Merrick Garland charge Donald Trump?
Well, remember, he is not the first one to make the call. It would be the person that he has given and delegated the responsibility to, Jack Smith, in part because of the political implications here. Obviously, Donald Trump is the presumed frontrunner in the GOP primary. He's a former president. He has made no small news about the idea that he believes all of this is a perpetual witch hunt. And so there is a distant 10-foot pole that Merrick Garland wants to have between himself, for obvious reasons, a political appointee, the head of the executive branch, under the pleasure of President Biden, the chief rival of the GOP primary lead, and of course, what's happening in this investigation. But if Jack Smith, who has had the delegated authority to make the decision, makes that determination, it really binds Merrick Garland as the AG to make a decision based on what the evidence shows under the special counsel, whose job it is to look at this. And so it is very likely, in a case where there's not a whole lot of ambiguity, unlike some other cases that might be brewing, if there's zero ambiguity and the evidence is there, Merrick Garland will likely have to follow the guidance of Jack Smith, whatever it might be.
Okay, and the two staffers who reportedly moved these boxes of documents, are they in trouble?
Could be. I mean, we've never seen, I haven't seen a photograph, I don't know if you have, of Donald Trump actually carrying boxes anywhere. I haven't seen him carrying the documents or to have some indication that he himself was alone in this. If he delegated responsibility to somebody else, if that person was involved in this, then there is the potential liability and potential prosecution. However, think about, there might be people who are voluntarily or actively cooperating to give the information to convey that there is likely that there was a dress rehearsal or otherwise. And I point again to Evan Corcoran. Remember, he was the attorney for Donald Trump. He tried to suggest he could not tell what may have been instructed to him or otherwise because of, obviously, the attorney-client privilege. We want any client to be able to be forthright and to be candid with their counsel to get legal legal advice. And we will shield those communications, Allison, except if there is a crime or fraud afoot. And yes, I said afoot on a Thursday night at 10 o'clock p.m. But really, if there was a crime afoot and fraud happening, we don't want to protect that. We don't want to use a shield of an attorney to further a crime. And so a judge has already said, you're going to have to testify about what you may have been instructed to in front of a grand jury. And so he apparently had very detailed notes. Whatever it was contained in that secret grand jury proceeding will give us more insight as to who else might be liable or at least potentially subject to prosecution.
It sounds like something's afoot, maybe even 2 feet. So thank you very much.
I knew you were going to say it. I knew it, Allison. I knew you were going to say it.
You knew that I was going to say something cheesy right there. Laura?
I was right there with you. Yep.
Fantastic. Great to see you. Thank you very much for all of that. Okay, let's
Nice to see you too.
Let's go back to the panel. Errol, the idea that the boxes were moved after they knew the FBI was coming, okay? They knew that they were being subpoenaed for this. And furthermore, that he kept some of these, I mean, obviously they have evidence or they have sources that say that he kept some of these documents in the open and showed them to people. You'll remember in the CNN town hall that he was asked about this by Caitlin Collins, and his answer was a little peculiar. So let me just play that for everyone.
When it comes to your documents, did you ever show those classified documents to anyone?
Not really. I would have the right to. By the way, they were declassified
What do you mean, not
after.
really?
Not that I can think of.
That sounds like the kind of thing you say under oath. This is Donald Trump during that town hall and in other settings has been trying out every defense that, comes to mind. I can automatically do it just by an act of my mind. I didn't really show it to anybody, not really. I don't remember.
But I could if I wanted to.
But I could if I wanted to. Right. He often has this habit of doing things in the open and trying to inoculate those actions by saying, clearly I wasn't trying to deceive anybody. I just laid it out there and everybody could see the boxes. That was something else he said during the town hall. Everybody saw the boxes. What are you talking about? I'm not trying to do anything that's improper or illegal. So the problem for him, of course, is that doesn't really comport with the law. When the National Archives comes and asks, or when a subpoena is executed and the Justice Department shows up, you are supposed to cooperate. And the non-cooperation itself gives rise to an offense. So that even if everything he said was true, if he thought he could magically, mentally declassify things, once the DOJ comes and says, we have a subpoena, you have to give this stuff back, and you don't do it, or you have a rehearsal to sort of pretend that you're going to do it, you get into a lot of trouble. And I think he's heading for a lot of legal trouble.
Rachel?
Look, the obstruction is one thing. And by the way, news at 11, Donald Trump does not have respect for American laws or procedure. I mean, we already knew that. So can they prove obstruction? Can they prove intent with this new information? Maybe. Certainly looks like it from the outside. We'll have to see what the legal process bears out. To me, it's the showing people of these documents that really just sort of erupts red flags for me. We are talking about documents that have been reported as nuclear codes, national security about operations that even our top national operatives don't know about. That's how secure these overseas operations are. And he's just showing them to business associates and friends, what? To feed his own ego so he can say how important he is? That, to me, is where the American electorate needs to really pay attention. Because it's not about the charges or, gee, is it this legal case or that legal case? He is being reckless with American lives. That's just the bottom line. Whether he thought he was allowed to or not, you look at what's in front of you and you show people, and that's something that can get people killed. And what happens if he gets back into office and he is that reckless on behalf of his ego, which, gee, it's just not a hard leap to think that that might happen again.